In this video, I will provide you with 6 different roof designs for the same floor plan. So let's go ahead and get started with our first one. We have a 12 and 12 roof pitch, or a roof that is going to have a 45-degree angle. And we're going to have plenty of attic space along with a drop-down attic ladder. And instead of using a small piece of ceiling backing here, you can always use a full height joist to install floor sheathing in your attic. And we are using 2x10 floor joists in this example. Yours might need to be larger. And if you're not going to use your attic for storage, then they could even be smaller. We're going to break the joists on the center of the wall here. The wall is going to run all the way through to the other end. And we're going to have straps located every 4 feet to create some type of a rafter tie. You can always put these straps on the sides and put them every 16 inches or 32 inches on center if needed. And you can see here where we are running these joists through a little bit. And I ran this board here through a little bit so that I could nail this joist here into this one here and get a nice lap tie to create a nice connection here. And then we're going to use some double hangers and a single hanger over here. And I made this a 1/2 inch larger than it needed to be. But that's this design here. This does not mean that that's going to work for you. Make sure that you read and follow the installation instructions for your pull-down stairway. And this pull-down stairway is located in between the living room and the kitchen, maybe even the kitchen with a dining area. You can always relocate it if it's going to work better for you in another part of the home. Next up, let's go ahead and install our roof rafters. Our roof rafters are going to be 2x10 and spaced 16 inches on center. And in case I didn't mention it, our ceiling joist will also be spaced 16 inches on center. Next up, let's add our blocks. We are going to be shaping the top of the blocks so that we can nail the roof sheathing to them. And I'm spacing this out 1.5 inches away from the face of the wall framing studs or the face of the blocks here, so that we can put our siding or stucco underneath the fascia board. And I'm leaving about 1.5 inches distance from the bottom of the fascia board to the lower part of the roof rafter here. We want to be able to slide some of our water-resistant materials or waterproofing materials underneath the fascia board. And this home might require some type of roof ridge bracing, and these braces are going to be 2x6 and they are about at a 45-degree angle. And we're going to nail it onto the side of the ridge and onto the side of the ceiling joist blocks, and also into the top plate wall framing if we can. And I made these 2x6 because they were going to be a little longer than normal. Next up, let's take a look at our collar ties. And we're going to be using 2x4 here. And these can be nailed to the roof rafters, I'm guessing, with at least 4 16D nails, 4 on this side, 4 on this side. And again, these are collar ties, not rafter ties. Our ceiling joists that are spaced 4 foot on center will be our rafter ties. And I went ahead and installed some floor sheathing, and it will be up to you and your local building department or building codes, structural engineers, to figure out if you're going to be able to sheet most of the floor or all of the floor, and quite possibly create some additional living space up there. And if you do create living space up here, you're probably going to need a regular stairway and not a pull-down stairway. Next up, let's go ahead and install our gable studs. And I went ahead and used 2x4. If you watched a couple of these other videos, I went ahead and made these 2x6 because most of the time 10 foot is the maximum length for a 2x4 in wall framing. But I went ahead and installed a wall stiffening brace here. And even though this one is installed in the middle, you could always install one at the 1/3 level and 2/3 level, or install even more of them depending upon your project and the length of the wall framing studs and whether or not your structural engineer is going to approve it. Next up, let's go ahead and add our fascia board fill. And that's going to be 1.5 inch spacer between the face of the wall framing, face of the rafter, and the back of the fascia board. And I'm also going to add some backing to the bottom of the roof rafter here so that I can get some better nailing. I can use at least 2 or even 3 nails to connect the top of the gable stud to the roof rafter and the backing. And the roof brace will attach to the ridge. You can always move this back a little further. but I moved it as far as I could this way because of the attic access opening. I didn't want to have it in the way of the opening. Next up, let's take a look at the gable stud, top of it, how it's going to be connecting to the rafter. So I can put one nail into the rafter, one nail into the backing, and then of course connect the backing to the roof rafter. Next up, let's go ahead and pan out here to take a look at our fascia board spacing boards. And again, those are 2x4s. You can always make them a little bigger. And if you want to, instead of using a 2x4, you can always use larger lumber for the gable stud wall stiffener, like a 2x6 or a 4x4. And I'm going to be using the framing hardware here. These are often referred to as hurricane ties to create a nice connection here. Go ahead and pan out. Like I said, you can have one in the middle, or you can have one a little bit lower and one a little higher, or use 2x6 for any gable studs that are going to be longer than 10 feet. And next up, let's take a look at the ceiling backing. This is a 2x4. We can nail the 2x4 into the gable studs. And since we're looking at the bottom of the ceiling joist, let's go ahead and head over to the drop-down stairway, framed opening, double hanger, single hanger, double hanger, double hanger, double hanger, and then double joist, one on each side. And even though I have the double joist in my example, you would need to check with your engineer to see if it would be required in your area. Next up, let's go ahead and pan out so that we can install the roof rafters. And there they are installed, 16 inches on center. And if you're looking for more information about roof rafter installation or laying them out so that they can be cut perfectly, make sure that you visit our website and check out more of our roof framing videos. Next up, let's go ahead and install the fascia board along with a rip strip. This is going to be an angled strip. Remember, our roof is at a 45-degree angle, and if our fascia board is plumb, then we're just simply going to grab a 2x4, measure up 1.5 inches, and cut a 45-degree angle, and then attach this to the top of the fascia board. You can go ahead and shape the top of the fascia board if needed, but I needed a little more room. I needed to lower this a little bit further to allow for a gap and provide me with a little bit of distance in between the bottom of the fascia board and the bottom of the roof rafter. Another view of it here are shaped blocks and what it would look like without the rip strip. Let's go ahead and put our rip strip back in. Head over to the bottom here. You can see the gap I'm talking about, 1.5 inches away from the wall framing and about 1.5 inches from the bottom of the fascia board to the bottom of the roof rafter. So for something like this, I could go ahead and install some flashing paper here, maybe something that's about 12 inches wide. And then after I've installed that, I could rip a 1x down to where I have 1.5 inch wide piece and then attach that to the bottom of the roof rafters. And obviously with something like this, we're not going to have any ventilation blocks at the bottom unless we drill some holes through the fascia board. So we're probably going to end up using some roof dormer vents to ventilate the attic if needed. Let's go ahead and head over to the other side here, give you another view of it. And even though I didn't run the fascia board spacer backing all the way down, you could do that if needed. And it might be better to do that if you're going to be attaching some type of a finished material in this area. And who knows, maybe you could always use this as the finished material and then just simply paint it. Go ahead and head up a little higher to provide you with another view of the gap here. And then up to the top. And then let's go ahead and remove the fascia boards so you can get an idea of how we're using the spacer boards here. Go ahead and put the fascia board back on. And then go ahead and pan out here a little bit so that we can go ahead and install our roof sheathing. And I went ahead and started with a roof sheathing at the top and worked my way down. Sometimes on steeper pitches, it's going to be easier to start at the top than it will be at the bottom, if that will work better for you. If you want more information on that, let me know in the comment area, and I'll be glad to make another video on that. So let's go ahead and wrap the video up here with my last suggestion, and that would be to watch the rest of the videos in this series. If you're planning on building a small house and don't really have your mind made up as to what type of roof you're going to install on it. Here is another one of our 625 square foot homes. We're going to put some green fascia board on this baby and throw an 8 and 12 roof pitch on it. Something like this might be a design you would use for a granny flat, or what now we're referring to as an ADU. And I believe ADU stands for accessory dwelling unit. So no grannies in the ADU, otherwise it would be a granny flat. So let's go ahead and take the roof off of it. And for those of you just watching this for the first time, this is about the 5th or 6th video in a series. You can also relocate the living room to the back and the kitchen to the front if that's also going to work better for your project. Leave all this area the same or simply flip the entire floor plan over from front to back. Let's go ahead and install our ceiling joists, 2x6, 16 inches on center, and we're going to butt them halfway over the wall. And if we do that, we're going to have to install a strap at least every 48 inches. That's usually the minimum to create rafter ties for a gable roof. And then we're going to go ahead and block it down the center. I'll show you the blocks here in a little bit. And let's go ahead and head over to the other side here to show you where the ceiling joist will be sitting on top of the wall. With full bearing, we're not going to pull them back, even though you can. I believe the minimum distance is 1.5 inches that the ceiling joists need to have to transfer the load through the ceiling joist to the walls. So that would be a load-bearing situation. Go ahead and head over to the access hole, and then we can go ahead and install our ceiling backing. And I'm also going to run a row of mid-span blocks on both sides to provide you with another example of something you can do if that will work on your project. I don't think I have this in the other houses that I have for this playlist. Now I went ahead and installed the ceiling joist backing between the blocks here on this one. Next up, let's go ahead and head underneath, give you a view of the access opening along with the ceiling backing. And some of you are probably wondering why I didn't double up these joists, and that's because I didn't feel it was necessary. However, you might need to on your project. It will depend upon the structural engineer in your area. Now I went ahead and ran this all the way to the block. This can actually stop over here. I just kind of ran it over to get some better nailing for this backing. And again, something else you can do if it will work for your project, but not necessary. Next up, let's head over to the exterior wall to show you where the backing will stop over here. It's going to be 1.5 inches away from the wall, because I'm going to be installing blocking in between the joist and the rafters. Also, we can take a look at the backing here. This block is going to notch. We're going to have a notch over the backing. Unlike over here where we butt the backing up against the block on each side, over here we notched the block and then ran this as a solid piece from this point to this point. Next up, let's take a look at how I staggered these blocks so that I could get better nailing. You can nail these blocks easier from both sides than you can if you have a situation like this, where the blocks are going to be in a straight line. So again, straight line, staggered and staggered. And let's go ahead and take a look at these two walls, what I did here. And I believe I described this in the other videos. These walls need to be stabilized. So if I can nail the backing to the wall and the joist, that'll be great. If not, I'm going to have to install some type of a block in between the joist and then nail that block to the joist and to the backing. Next up, let's go ahead and install our roof rafters. Take a look at the blocks, how they're going to notch over the ceiling joist, providing you with another method that might work better for your project. And the rafters are 2x8, everything 16 inches on center. Next up, let's build our gable wall. And I'm going to install a brace over here, a brace in the center, and a brace over here. And I'm also going to have those braces on the other side also. So we have our outer boards notched for our 2x4 lookouts, or outlookers, however you want to reverse that. We'll just call them our fascia board holder uppers. So here we have a brace. I went ahead and installed 2x6 flat backing here, and then installed a 2x6 here to help support the ridge a little bit better. And the reason why I did this is just to provide you with another example of something you can do if the wall framing studs are going to be longer than 10 feet. But again, to verify all this, you would have to check with your local building department, structural engineers, or contractors. And I went ahead and installed a block here in between the rafters so that I could attach the brace to the block and the rafter, and then attach it to the ceiling joist and the midspan block here. And of course I did the same on the other side. Go ahead and take a closer look at it. Another view there. Let's head up to the top. And you could have a situation where you got to get in between the rafter, your backing, or some other obstacles, making this brace a little more difficult to install. And if that's the case, simply attach it to one of the gable studs, or move it back and attach it to this rafter here, because something is usually going to be better than nothing when it comes to making a building stronger with braces. And again, you might not need those braces. I just kind of threw them in there to provide you with another thing that you might be able to do on your project. And of course, I didn't need this board to go all the way up. This board is meant to provide us with a little more nailing to connect the gable studs to the roof rafter, again making something a little stronger. Now I went ahead and I shaped the top of the roof ridge to provide better nailing for the roof sheathing, and I really think this is a good idea for steeper roof pitches. And next up, let's go ahead and install our fascia board, our lookouts here, and our outlookers over here. Let's just hope that pretty soon I don't start calling these outriggers. And if there's one thing I can say about the construction industry, they have a variety of different names for the exact same part, making your job as a do-it-yourselfer a little more difficult to figure out what they're actually talking about. So I hope I'm not messing you up here. Don't forget to install the collar ties, 48 inches on center. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at how these boards are notched into the roof framing rafter to provide cantilevered support to help hold up the fascia board. And I will be getting around to doing a video on people that just nail some 2x4s together and create some boxes and attaching it to the roof rafter with what I would consider to be substandard structural support. And I think the problems get even worse when you're dealing with heavy snow loads or the wrong building materials. And in this example, the bottom of the fascia board is shaped to provide us with some better nailing for our roof sheathing. Next up, let's take a look at a different type of wall framing you might be able to use, especially if you live in Holland, where you can find plenty of stepped gable roofs. Now, normally they're going to be built out of bricks. However, we built ours out of wood framing. And you can divide it up into a variety of different sections. I divided it up into 5 sections here. And they can also be higher than I have it here, or just a little bit lower, because you're not going to want to see the roof. And in some cases, you're not going to want to see the side fascia board either. And to fix this, all you need to do would be to extend the wall framing out a little bit or bring the roof framing in a little bit to hide the fascia board. So let's go ahead and remove the roof trusses so we can get a better look at the wall framing. And this is actually a design that I like, even though it seems like something you would find in the Old West, in one of the old Western movies for the general store. And one way will be to use 4x4s. I went ahead and used 4x4s at the breaks here to provide a little stronger connection here. And you might consider using 2x6 for a wall like this. In our example, we're using 2x4. And you might be able to get away with nailing a block here instead of running a full length stud all the way down to the ground. And of course, you could do it over here also. And the difference in height between the walls is 24 inches. However, yours could be a little taller or shorter, depending upon your roof pitch. I think we have about a 4 and 12 roof pitch here. And if it was going to be a 6 and 12 roof pitch, then there could be a 3-foot height difference in the walls. Next up, let's go ahead and install our roof trusses. I wanted to give you an idea. I'm going to have a nailer board here. So we're not going to have a roof truss going up against the wall here. However, this ceiling backing board might need to float with the ceiling because it could cause the roof truss and the ceiling to lower a little bit. So we're going to nail this board to the wall framing. And then once we nail our sheathing to this board here, that's going to give us a nice strong connection here between the roof and the wall framing. Next up, let's head down to the corner here. Now, I just took one of the trusses apart here. You don't have to frame it like this. That corner can be framed differently. And I don't know for sure if you're going to have to fire block this section of the wall framing. You might need to, depending upon the location of the wall. For example, if it's going to be located in the front of the building and there's a parking lot in the front of the building or a large yard, you might not need to fire block it. However, if this is situated next to another building, maybe 5 feet apart from it, then you might need to fire block it to make sure that that other building doesn't catch on fire when this building's burning down. Which brings me to another point I like to mention in my videos. Check with your local building department and engineers to verify the information in videos like these. Next up, let's take a look at the fascia board. And this isn't going to be real common. You're usually not going to have a section of the roof coming off of the side of a stepped gable. The stepped gable is usually going to extend a little further past. But I went ahead and did this anyway just to provide you with another example of something you might be able to do, something that might work for your project. Next up, let's go ahead and install our roof sheathing. Again, you can see once we nail the sheathing to this backing board here, and that backing board is nailed to the wall framing studs, we're going to get a pretty good connection. Next up, let's go ahead and install a 1x4 for our Z-bar backing. This will help with the roof flashing. And I'm pretty sure I have other videos on Z-bar installation. And another reason why you might consider extending the height of the wall here would be to prevent the people standing in front of the building from viewing an obnoxious air conditioning, condensation unit, or other things that might be on top of the roof. And I really don't know the reason why this was popular in Holland. And maybe it had something to do with the bricks, using bricks instead of lumber. And an example of the fire blocking here. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that. You can see it's going to go all the way across here. And then let's go ahead and take a view of it from the inside. This will prevent a fire from the inside here from pulling fresh air from the attic into the room below, and also prevent the fire from entering into the attic through the wall framing. Another thing you will need to check, like I said, with your local building department. Now you can always install a strap here or another type of framing connector to connect the top plates to the post here, or to connect the top plates to the wall framing studs if you're not going to be using a 4x4. Next up, let's go ahead and take a look at another roof that is going to have about a 1/2 inch per foot slope, or about a 0.5 and 12. And I went ahead and extended the roof framing on this side here to provide you with one example on how to build it, and then went ahead and installed a rim joist over here to provide you with another example. And I would imagine, even though the other one is going to be a little stronger, I don't think you would ever have a problem with that method there. So on this side here, we have the same wall framing throughout the rest of the house. And over on the other side, we have the rake wall, or the extended wall framing. And keep in mind that you can use both methods on either side. And I'm only designing it this way to provide you with 2 different examples. So I can have a rake wall on this side, or I can have this wall here on this side and this one here on that side. And I hope that makes sense. But if you do end up building it this way, so be it. And we do have fire blocks here. And you might even be able to get away with just using 1 top plate. I don't see why you would need 2 top plates here. And that might even provide you with a better connection. And next up, let's go ahead and take a look at it from this view here so that we can install our joist. And we're going to be using TJIs. The TJIs are going to be 14 inches tall, and that's to allow for a thicker insulation and possibly better ventilation. So again, TJI truss joist. And we're going to need to install some ceiling backing. So we're going to be using 2x6s here and here, 2x4s over here, along with 2x4s over here. And we're going to install some 2x4s over here. And I do have other ceiling backing installed on some of the other videos. You can always go back and take a look at them. The truss joists are 24 inches on center. And this ceiling backing here can nail into the wall framing studs. And then, of course, you can get a better idea at the fire blocking. The fire blocking is to prevent air or fire from passing through the wall framing and then into the ceiling. And I know you're probably thinking, well, what's going to prevent it from just going right through the drywall into the ceiling? And it won't. This is just another safety precaution in case it doesn't go through the ceiling, but goes through the wall framing. And next up, let's go ahead and take a look at the upper view with the rake wall here. And all I did to calculate the height of the rake wall was went up 5.5 inches to the center, because I just went ahead and ripped some 2x6 in half to get two roof rafters that were exactly the same, one here and one over here. And hopefully that makes sense. So we have a 2x6 here, and then we have our blocks. And I went ahead and installed the blocking on this side right here, even with the one side. And then these shape boards can be toe-nailed into the ceiling joist. Or I'd imagine you could even nail up from the bottom if the manufacturer would allow that. So like I said, I went ahead and installed the blocks over a little bit. You can put them in the center if you want to, but sometimes this will give the electrician and the plumber, if they need it, a little more room to install their pipes and wires. So again, you can see it's nice and even on this side, but not directly in the center underneath the ridge. And of course, this is something that you could go over with your structural engineer. And we can see how everything's dying in here. We're going to get some nice nailing here. Next up, let's go ahead and install our fascia board spacers. We're going to use 2x4s. And these will provide us with 1.5 inch space between the back of the fascia board and the front of the wall framing. So I went ahead and provided you with two different examples over here. So we're not extending the ridge past the wall framing. We're using the spacer boards. However, on the other side, I went ahead and ran the ridge past 1.5 inches. And again, just to provide you with another thing you can do or choose not to do, just another idea that you might even be able to use on different projects in the future. And next up, let's take a look at the lower corner here. And you can see where the rim joist is making a nice corner. If I used a truss joist over here, then I wouldn't have a solid surface here. I would have to fill the truss joists in. And of course, that would be the distance between the upper and lower chord on the truss. So that's why I went ahead and used a solid fill material. Next up, let's go ahead and install our fascia board and then take a bottom view of it. Again, we have 1.5 inch gap here, and that's going to be all the way around the perimeter. Next up, let's take a look at how I lowered the fascia board along with the backing board here. And it's probably about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit less. And this is to make sure that I have a nice smooth transition to keep everything straight. If I go ahead and install both of these boards even or flush with the top of the ceiling framing, then I could end up with a flat spot on the roof that could trap water above the finished roofing materials. Next up, let's go ahead and pan out. And it's not a bad looking building here, at least I don't think so. Next up, let's take a look at how everything is going to finish out here, so that we can, of course, install our roof sheathing. And even though I went ahead and installed some smaller strips here, you might need to install wider ones. Some engineers require minimum roof sheathing sizes of anywhere between 16 and 24 inches, meaning that this part right here wouldn't be approved by your engineer. And of course, let's not forget that you might need a center load support footing, depending upon whether or not the joist can span the width of the building. And next up, let's go ahead and put a hip roof on our 625 square foot house. And since the building is square, it's 25 feet by 25 feet, we will not have a ridge at the top of the roof, and all of the hips will meet in the center. Now let's go ahead and remove the roof. Remember, we have a 2-bedroom, living room, kitchen, 1 bath, and then a couple of closets here. And then our heating and air conditioning unit can go above the ceiling in this house. However, we will need to put the water heater somewhere, maybe on the outside of the house. And we will be conventionally framing this house, so we're going to have 2x6 ceiling joists that line up with each other, even though we don't have to line these up because our roof rafters aren't going to line up. And I'll explain the reason why here in a little bit. And we are going to have a strong back here. This will be a 2x4. You can always make this a 2x6 or a 2x8. And you can use building hardware if you want to connect the ceiling joist to the strong back. And sometimes the strong back will reduce the chances of your ceiling joist sagging. However, I hate to say, I rarely came across that if the joists are undersized. So make sure that you're using the correct sized ceiling joist. And the strong back is located in between the two walls, about in the center somewhere. And then we're going to have blocks, and I will need a strap every 4 feet to basically create a rafter tie. And we will need an access hole into the attic. And the size of this hole will depend upon the furnace or the forced air unit, or even the size of other building components that need to get through this hole. And when I was working in the 70s and the 80s, a lot of these holes were 30 inches by 30 inches. However, now I've noticed that they are a lot smaller on some projects. You can see here we do not have any ceiling backing. Wait a minute, now we do. And the ceiling backing here can be nailed to the top plates. We're going to be using a 2x6 because of our 2x4 walls. And if you can, try to nail directly above the wall framing studs so that the plumbers and the electricians don't drill holes right where your nails are and ruin their drill bits. So if you can just kind of put your nails over the wall framing studs, that'll help a lot. And of course, a view of our backing here. We will have 1 inch if we're using a 2x6 over a 2x4 wall on each side. And that should provide enough room for you to attach your drywall to the ceiling backing. Now let's go ahead and zoom in over where the wash machine is going to be located. If you notice, I don't have a block here. I have a block here. And the block here is basically to stabilize the end of the wall framing here. If I don't have this block, then this wall can kind of move wherever until it's drywalled, and then after that it might not be plumb. So make sure that you stabilize anything when you run into a situation like this. Here we're going to be able to nail the backing next to the ceiling joist to prevent the upper part of the wall from moving in either direction. And let's go ahead and take a look at the lower view here and then swing over to the other side. And next up, let's go ahead and take a look at the post. We are going to put a post in the center here, right underneath the hips. And just a few minutes ago, somebody emailed me a question. They were wondering how you can support a pyramid roof to prevent it from pushing the walls out. And this post just might help with that problem. And in this example, we're going to have the 4 hips connecting into each other. And next up, let's go ahead and add our fill rafters or our jack rafters. And I'm not going to be coming off of the center here with a roof rafter. And the reason for that would be to reduce the amount of waste for the roof sheathing, even though I'm not 100% sure I actually accomplished that in this video. Let's go ahead and head down to the lower section. We're going to have square cut fascia board, and we're basically only going to have a couple of flyers at the end there. Along with our drywall backing blocks, we're going to use blocks here in between the roof rafters to nail the corner of the drywall to. Take a look at it from the bottom. And this is a common method. I've been doing it for years. And of course, the layout for the roof rafters, you can see here where I have all of the jack rafters lining up with the opposing rafter. However, I'm not going to be able to connect the rafter on one side to the rafter on the other side for my rafter tie if I use this layout here. So just keep in mind that this right here might not work for your project, and is simply going to provide you with another thing to consider, or a good argument for not using a rafter in the center all the way around the perimeter and then pulling off of that rafter in each direction with your on-center layout. Now keep in mind, we might not have this problem if we had an evenly spaced measurement. 25 feet does not divide into 2-foot increments as well as 24 or 26 feet would. Next up, let's go ahead and install our fascia board. And then I want to kind of zoom in on the block here. I'm going to be using a block. I had to reduce the height of this ceiling joist to a 2x4 to go underneath the hips. And that shouldn't be a problem if you can use a block like I'm using here to increase the strength of the ceiling joist that's now overspanned. So we're just simply going to end nail the ceiling joist into the block and then end nail the block into the rafter. Another trick for your carpenter toolbox. Take a look at the corner, how it's going to work out to attach our drywall to. And take a look at the fascia board. And of course, even though we reduce the height of the ceiling joist, we're still going to have to notch a little bit of it around the bottom of the hip to make it work. And next up, let's take a look at the fascia board corner here. And then from the other side here, sheathing, you can see the edge of the sheathing where it meets the fascia board is going to be nice and square, unlike if we use plumb cut fascia board. And again, like I said, I don't really think this worked out like I thought it was going to. And we could always redo the layout for the roof sheathing. We could start a little further over to the right or a little further over to the left to make it work a little better. And in the next video, we are basically going to be building the 4 Dutches on top of the hip roof we just built in our last video. And this is a method I found in some of my older roof framing books. I have roof framing books back to the 1800s that I use for some of my research. And this is going to be built on top of a hip roof. And the beauty about this is that all of the framing components for one section can be used for the other sections. So these roof rafters right here, along with the fascia board, the ridge, the lookouts, and even the gable studs can all be the same. And that's actually how I built this project here. So if you remember, I have a previous video that showed you how to build a hip roof. Go back to the playlist if you need more information on that, or if you can't find it, let me know in the comment area and I will find a link to that. So we just have a standard hip roof. Since it is a square building, we are not really going to have a ridge, and all of the hips will come to a point. So again, make sure that you check out that video if you need more information on it. Next up, let's go ahead and add one of the sections, zoom in on it here, so that we can take a look at how everything is going to be attached and fastened together. Now we are going to have a 1-inch gap between the bottom of the fascia board and the top of the roof sheathing. And the reason for that is so that we can install the roofing shingles underneath the fascia board. And the measurement here will vary depending upon the roofing materials you're going to use. For example, if I'm going to use composition roof shingles, I might only need a 3/4 inch space. But if I'm going to use a heavy clay tile, I might need 3 inches or 4 inches between the top of the sheathing and the bottom of the fascia board. And our gable studs will be shaped something like this, and will be sitting on top of a shaped 2x4. If you need this to be supported a little better, then make sure that you use a 2x6. I think that this will be just fine. And I do have 2x4 rafters for everything here, along with 2x4 gable studs and 2x4 lookouts, 2x6 fascia board. And I went ahead and extended this to go beyond this point here and going back of the roof rafter so that I could attach this to the roof rafter. That might not be necessary. And if you need more information about building this, let me know in the comment area. I consider this to be advanced roof framing, and I'll be glad to provide more information on that, like step-by-step instructions, if there are at least 100 people interested in it. So let us know in the comment area. But other than that, if I don't see a lot of interest in it, then I'm not going to worry about it. And we have a 2x6 ridge. You want your ridge to be long enough so that it will have full support for the roof rafters. And then I'm going to put a gable stud underneath the roof ridge to help support it. However, you will need to move this over a little bit if you're going to put a gable vent here. And I do have examples of that in other videos. And a lot of my home building projects like these can be found by clicking on the home building tab at the website. And then on that web page, you should come across something that says home building projects. So make sure that you check those out if you're interested in looking at more roof framing, wall framing, floor framing, stuff like that. And of course, everything is going to blend in nice and flat, nice and straight on the same plane. Next up, let's go ahead and add the other sections here so you can get an idea how they're going to blend in. So all of the jack rafters or fill rafters will connect to the hip. However, something like this can be built on top of the roof sheathing. If it's going to be easier for you, install the roof sheathing all the way up to the top. Just make sure that there are holes cut in the roof sheathing underneath the Dutch roof framing for ventilation. You've got to be able to have air circulating in this area. And if I was going to build something like this, I would install this roof sheathing first, even though it might create a problem for nailing this rafter here at the bottom. And if that was going to be the case, I would just make sure that I installed these rafters all the way around the perimeter. So that would be 8 rafters, and then install the roof sheathing so that it would make it easier for you to work on this project. Because it's often difficult to build something like this standing on the roof rafters. Nice and straight ridge there. So again, all these framing components, this rafter here is same as this one, and this one here is the same as this one all the way up. And then the ridges would be the same length also. And the last thing I want to look at will be this piece right here. If you can avoid nailing it until after the roof shingles have been applied, the roofer will greatly appreciate it. And I'm not about to suggest the roofer won't be able to build this without having access to this area, but it will definitely help. And there you have it. 6 different types of roofs you can build on a square building, especially one that's 625 square feet. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, let us know by hitting the thumbs up button or letting us know in the comment area.